Okay, what's up everybody? It's your favorite comic book nerd's favorite nerd and whatever. Today we're looking at Dark Cybertron Volume 2. Same type of thing, same type of book, $20. Nothing to write home about product-wise. There's no real special features in it. It's just the story. Hopefully we'll get like a special version or special edition or hardback or something down the road. While there's things, and we'll talk about that at the end, that I like and things that I don't like, this has those character elements and those like give you the chills moments that, you know, IDW has kind of been known for, and we're going to dig into that. But without further ado, because it's the same basic product, just different pages stuck in between, let's get into the story. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. Let's start with the Lost Light. As of right now, the Ammonites are beginning to retreat from the Lost Light, from the attack on the Lost Light, and initially the Autobots think that they have defeated the Ammonites, but then they come to discover that the Ammonites are really just changing objectives, and they are moving into Metroplex. Millions of them, it seems. We find out that the crew inside Metroplex has survived the explosion, and Metroplex is actually changing and transforming inside, putting up walls, taking down walls, and has shielded them from the blast, which is why they survived the explosion of the rod pod. Because he's been forming around, that explains the arrows and why they ended up moving in a great big circle. They get a call from Swerve. Swerve says, "Get out of there." He explains the metal flakes that they found are a symptom of a contracted virus, which triggers the process of transmutation, which basically means it's eating away at the actual metal, the actual body of Metroplex, and it is extremely contagious. And then all of a sudden, Swerve switches gears and says, "Get out of there." And they're like, "Well, you already told us to get out of there." And he's like, "No, this is a different get out of there. Last get out of there is because of disease. This get out of there is because all these Ammonites are on the way." Whirl pops back up, and he has found the Ammonite that has detonated the rod pod. Whirl has probably used his own interrogation techniques. Basically, he has found out that Ammonites are working for Shockwave. The Ammonite explains that they've been keeping tabs on them for some time, and they made a deal with Shockwave. Basically, that he will end the Ammonite war if they were to follow the Lost Light and cripple any possible plans of it being successful in its goals. After saying this, the Ammonite blows up involuntarily, as if something was programmed inside him, where if he were to speak, about the plans, he would self-destruct. And at this time, the Autobots are also interrupted by Nautica and Chromia, who initially demand the Autobots surrender. They're far from idiots, though, and it doesn't take long for them to realize that they're all wearing the same badge, the Autobot symbol. The fembots explain that they have been keeping Metroplex alive. They've basically been looking after him. And we're also introduced into Windblade, who is their leader and the shoehorn Hasbro figure. They basically explain that they were sent on a mission by Alpha Trion to help Metroplex. We find out that Metroplex was under a chemical assault and teleported to this water planet because he knew that the water would slow the spread of the disease. And they've been guardians of Plex ever since. Now that they're all on the same page, the new Autobot team basically devises a plan to use the Lost Light engines with the water as a conduit to jumpstart Metroplex. So Optimus Prime and his team are still locked up, and Nova Prime is still holding them captive with Nightbeat. We understand that Nova Prime wants their sparks. The reason why he wants their sparks is because he's been using Cup to be a space bridge between the life universe and the dead universe. Because of Cup's age, it has been unsuccessful. It can't maintain the connection. So they want to use these Autobot sparks to augment the power needed to make that goal a reality. You can also tell that Nightbeat is fighting this brainwash. Rodimus notices it and holds his hand up. It has a fraction on it, 89/101. Rodimus says, "Look at my hand." We know that Nightbeat loves mysteries. He's a detective. His natural character is to get to the bottom of things. And he says, "You're a captain of a starship. How many crew members do you have aboard?" And Rodimus says, 190. Good job. He solved the mystery. It all clicks for him. He realizes what's going on. He helps the Autobots escape. So their next goal is to rescue Cup, obviously, and in the midst of that, Rodimus has a conversation with Prime, where he basically explains that, he brought that Overkill on board and all the damage that Overkill caused, and as a result, he held a vote basically to the Lost Light crew saying, you know, do you want me to stay as your leader or go? And 89 wanted him gone. He's kind of expecting this pep talk from Optimus, and what's awesome is that Optimus doesn't give it to him. Optimus says, you could have resigned. Well, what happened to the pep talk, the glorious Optimus Prime standard cliche pep talk? And Optimus is like, grow up. We don't have time to make you feel secure in your position. Man up. And that's a pretty interesting character thing between Rodimus and Optimus, and it continues on. But unfortunately, before this character thing can really develop right now, Nova Prime shows up. Nova Prime and Optimus get to scrapping it out, and it's just a slugfest. Nova is like morphing his image into all the different primes, Zeta Prime, even Optimus Prime, and is saying how the primes are a disgrace. It's challenging Optimus because it's really driving home the idea that maybe being a prime isn't a good thing. Maybe there's actually been a lot more negativity and chaos caused by primes than actual positive end results. It's messing with Optimus's head, I think. Rodimus interjects. He basically explains to him, like, do you know why I always looked up to you? Do you know why I did this? Do you know why I did that? And Optimus is sure of Rodimus's intentions and says, because you wanted to be a prime. And Rodimus says, no, because I wanted to be you. It's like an awesome character moment, and everything kind of clicks for Optimus. You know, at the same exact moment, Nova blasts Rodimus. And it's cool because not only did it, you know, drive home the point to Optimus, but it's almost like the 86 movie reversed in a way. Rodimus jumps in this time to kind of put his arm around Prime instead of Megatron, you know, so to speak, and as a result, Rodimus takes the hit instead of Prime. It's just, there's some, you know, it harkens back to all that, which is pretty awesome. Optimus being Optimus and realizing what's happened, he's pretty furious, and he unleashes hell. This is the most violent that we've seen Optimus, I think, in the comics. Arms are being ripped off, and, you know, he is out for blood. Needless to say, Nova's defeated, but the negative connotation to that is that they realize that they're stranded. Well, they're trying to make contact with Wheelie and them, and they find this like tear in something where they're able to communicate through, and that all gets a little goofy to me, but they're able to make contact with Wheelie seemingly and get out of there. Now, where are they going? So what's going on with our Cybertronian bots? Well, Galv is en route back to assumingly Shockwave's headquarters with a Megatron in 2 pieces, and is surprise attacked by Bumblebee. Gets into a rustle-tussle with Galvatron, and of course Galvatron gets the better of him, grabs him by his throat, holds him up in the air with every intention of sending him straight to the morgue, and B is saved by Megatron. One quick blast to Galvatron, and B's in the clear. So B picks up Megatron's pieces, carries him to safety, and we get a really like nice iconic image of, you know, arguably the weakest Autobot, you know, historically carrying the strongest Decepticon to safety. That's IDW, ladies and gents. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Starscream's on the verge of giving up. It's all a bit much for Starscream, isn't it? I mean, he's really not built or cut out for that sort of thing. Scheming and all that kind of stuff, that's his arena, but not huge global threats. Just when he's on the verge of giving up, Prowl and the Dinobots and Ironhide and the Decepticons and all show up with Rat Trap. The future starts to look a little bit more bright for Mr. Starscream. Prowl analyzes the situation and basically says, look, Shockwave is playing this thing logically, and that's the same way we got to play. We haven't been playing logically. You know, we've been playing all sorts of other ways, but not logically. So he starts to formulate a plan. They're about to get underway with this, and then Megatron and B show up. Megatron obviously has a plan. B has his moment. He puts his foot down. He becomes decisive. He finally gets it. Everything pays off. The character arc for Bumblebee is now complete. He has stepped into his own as a leader. What he says is, when I was in charge, I stared at the darkness for so long I let it consume me. I looked at our endless war, the friends we lost, the world we destroyed, but what I should have seen is our perseverance. We don't give up. I'm not letting Cybertron fall to anyone again. You know, it harkens back because, you know, under kind of B's watch, it's fallen to Starscream and a Titan and Shockwave, and now possibly Megatron if he doesn't take control. It's a very delicate relationship. They're not buddy-buddy quite yet. At that point, the Lost Light shows up with the Titan there's obviously the initial shock and all of them not being dead, because they've all been believed to have been dead now by the Cybertronians. And Megatron kind of has a great line where he says, "Naive little Autobot, since when does anyone stay dead?" The war gets on, right? So Metroplex obviously takes on the Titan. Everyone kind of jumps into the battle. Megatron teleports with the thumb from the Lost Light to Metroplex, and as a result, Metroplex is kind of able to defeat the Titan, which is a little weird to me, but, you know, I'll take it, I guess. It just seems a little meh to me. I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on that? But the key is that Bumblebee has to trust him. He has to, you know, it's another step in the relationship that Bumblebee has to trust Megatron not to take control. He's letting him out on his own for this teleporting bit, and what's to stop Megatron from just doing Megatron things? So with the Titan gone, Cybertron is safe. We have a 2-page beautiful spread, or splash page, or whatever you want to call it, of everybody united. The Decepticons, the Autobots, the Lost Light crew, you know, everybody's together for the first time in forever. Bumblebee's character arc is solidified with Prowl praising his decisions to trust Megatron. And that is, both for Prowl and Bumblebee, huge steps. That's a payoff. There's also a really cool scene with Megatron and Ratchet, where Ratchet is repairing Megatron, and just given the history of the two, like in the Marvel comics and everything, and even though that doesn't play a part in IDW, it's still very much alive in the fans' memory. Just to see Ratchet repairing Megatron and the two of them talking, and neither one, and especially Ratchet not really trusting Megatron, it's a very cool moment. And also, for some odd reason, RC gets a new body, just kind of because. But the other really great moment is that Megatron and Bumblebee talk. What comes out of this conversation is just classic IDW. Megatron asks him, "When do you think I came closest to outright victory? Samanzi?" And Bumblebee says the Samanzi was a massacre, half the Cybertronian race was destroyed. And Megatron goes on to say, "I used to think that that was the closest I ever got to victory." But what Megatron is realizing is that a victory in battle doesn't necessarily mean that he has gotten his victory. The way that he realizes that is by seeing Starscream. Starscream has taken control of Cybertron, but he doesn't have the people in his corner. So he's not really a king. He's only a king in name only. Winning means winning the people. And he had the people when he originally started protesting. The people had his back. And then Megatron goes on to say, "I lost the war the moment I gave the order to fight." And that, my friends, that is why I read IDW. It's moments like that. And they're not as abundant as they could be, and they're not as abundant as maybe they should be. But when they hit like an atom bomb. Magnus and Prowl have a conversation as well. Magnus basically holds a mirror up to Prowl. He tells him about himself. And it's really driven home with the line, "Your actions have consequences and you're never there to bear them." Prowl is a chess player. Prowl's willing to make sacrifices to get the job done. But he's always going to be doing it from a safe place. When Magnus kind of holds that mirror up to him, I think it drives the point home. What are our villains up to? Shockwave has more people behind him than what we initially thought. He's got Bludgeon, and he's got Monstructor. And we hadn't really been paying much attention to them in the first volume. We also learned that Galvatron feels Nova Prime fall in the dead universe. So now Shockwave is very much aware of that. And Shockwave also is aware of the Titan's fall. However, he also states that he's far from defeat. And then he orders Metal Hawk to destroy Waspinator. And just as he's about to, Shockwave starts to talk about his plan, which we haven't really got inside knowledge of. And he says, "Though we kill a universe, it is merely fuel for a greater plan. Millions of years ago, I seeded the galaxy with ores, each able to alter a fundamental property of existence. Individually powerful, but combined they are unstoppable." And we realize that his need for Galvatron is to connect all of these ores with the dead universe. Metal Hawk is listening to this. He's unsure what to make of it, to say the least, but he doesn't really have time to process it before Skywarp comes in, grabs the two of them, and warps out. And I'm a little confused. Maybe I just don't remember how Skywarp, or who orders Skywarp to do it. I kind of feel like it's in there, but it's just not coming to memory. I'm going to blame myself before I blame, a writer like James Roberts. The point is that we now know that Shockwave definitely wants the universe as we know it to come to an end. And he goes on to say, all of space and time shall cease to exist as a single point in ultimate singularity, a black hole. All the universe, all of history shall collapse into me, and my army is getting things underway. What army is that? An entire Ammonite legion. So war is back on, and in a big way. We got Monstructor, we've got the Ammonite army, we've got Shockwave's forces, we've got the Dinobots and Prowl. Prowl is merging back with the Constructicons to make the Prowvastator. Megatron is fixed and declares that Bumblebee is in control of our unified forces to the rest of the Decepticons. Now, drastic times call for drastic measures, so they kind of bite the bullet now, but they're not sure how it tastes later. Skywarp, knowing where the lair is, obviously, teleports a large amount of the forces into Shockwave's lair for that portion of the final battle. The battle that doesn't involve, Shockwave directly, the battle that involves Metroplex and the Ammonites and Monstructor and all that, the climax of that is that the Lost Light comes down and decapitates Monstructor. And that's really the only noteworthy piece in that battle. The real meat and potatoes is in the Shockwave fight. There we have some really great moments. Megatron has beaten the snot out of Galvatron, and he's about to assassinate him, basically. And Bumblebee interrupts and says, he's given up, Megatron, leave it. And Megatron says, but he ripped me in half. And then Bumblebee goes on this point-driven monologue. And in return, you're going to kill him? Is that how your world works? Each blow invites a bullet? Because look where it's got you. Look where it's got all of us. All those years ago when you dreamed of life outside of the Energon mines. Is that what you wanted to become? The person who would rather kill than not kill? So this dialogue convinces Megatron to not kill Galvatron. But what it also subsequently does is it gives an opportunity for Shockwave to blast Bumblebee seemingly into oblivion. And Megatron goes absolutely berserker. Now, meanwhile, amongst the other fighting, Skids takes a sword to the chest. Bludgeon eventually falls. Everyone is seemingly in peril. Brainstorm is feeling queasy. And that queasiness leads to another one of these ore space bridge things, which shoots Prime and his crew that was in the dead universe out of Brainstorm's chest. They use it as a device to get characters from one point to another, but it does get a little tiresome to me. Almost instantly we realize that the real universe, the life universe, if you will, is having adverse effects on Cup, Nightbeat, and Cyclonus, all the people that were touched by the dead universe. So they're pretty much out of the game. But the climax to it all, the moment we've all waited for, is Prime and Megatron teaming up to defeat Shockwave. And it is another one of those IDW moments. Megatron dons the Autobot symbol. And not just any Autobot symbol, but Bumblebee's Autobot symbol. And he says, once this symbol represented our oppressors. You stood against them, and in retaliation they twisted you into an uncaring, unfeeling creature. And he basically says that they did the same to him. Not in the same way, whereas Shockwave was in a lab, but through Megatron's efforts to create what he thought was like an equal class in Cybertron, ultimately he was twisted into this thing as well. Now he's not passing the buck, it's not like he's not claiming responsibility, but he realizes the outlying factors. So he continues to say, this symbol belonged to my friend Bumblebee. He fought for freedom, an honest freedom inspired by a Prime unlike any that had ever come before. So Prime and Megatron make a conscious effort between the two of them to talk to Shockwave and remind him of who he is. Remind him of the senator that he once was before he became Shockwave as we know him. It starts to get through, and Shockwave starts to become tortured by the idea of what he's become. But he knows there's no way of stopping this black hole thing that he started, so he asks basically to be destroyed by Optimus and Megatron. They both take him up on that offer, but not without a great piece of dialogue by Optimus. On behalf of everyone you've helped, every naive young law enforcer whose eyes you opened, and every miner you made sure was safe, Senator Shockwave, I promise you I will remember you as you were. And boom. So how does this thing close? Well, it closes with Starscream being in some pretty hot water. Brainstorm seemingly saving the dead universe bots with his brainstorming. And perhaps most importantly for the future, Soundwave realizes that Megatron is now wearing the Autobot symbol and feels probably pretty betrayed. As a result, it leaves an opening for Galvatron to kind of step up and take the leadership role, leading the Decepticons into the future of the IDW Comics. Prime and Megatron talk for the first time in IDW as friends since flashbacks. Or, maybe friends is a stretch, but not enemies. Prime asking him, "Are you serious about this?" And Megatron says it's not a trick. And then Megatron asks him, "After all Shockwave did, were you able to look past it and see him as your friend?" And Prime says, in typical Prime fashion, "You already know my answer," and the book closes. I like it an awful lot. I really do. I love the little character things, like with Whirl and with Swerve and with Magnus and with Prowl and the arcs that we kind of see. But even more importantly are those dialogue moments. Those dialogue moments where it slaps you in the face and reminds you what it means to be a Transformer fan. It reminds you what it means to know these characters, to love these characters, and what they mean to each other and what they mean to you as a fan. Whereas, like, another great Transformer book like The Last Stand of the Wreckers is kind of about, like, what it means to be a Wrecker versus an Autobot. This book raises some similar questions, like, what does it mean to be a Prime? But of course, nothing is perfect. Some of the problems that I have with it are this whole thing with the oars and the space bridges and jumping through people's chests and all that. That all seems a little too much for me. And I mean, I know we're talking about transforming alien robots, so I get it. But just seems a little like, why haven't we heard about all these oars and everything before? Or have we? And just remind me if we have. I don't remember them. So it just seems a little weird for them to come out of nowhere all of a sudden and be this major plot device for the first kind of epic crossover IDW Transformer event, to me. The other problem I have with it is, like I discussed before, the shoehorning of Hasbro merchandise within the books. And mainly, in this book, the biggest example would be G-Axis changing forms. When G-Axis and Starscream are fighting, he says that he has morphing armor or some such nonsense. What? You have morphing armor? And you can morph into Hasbro's Deluxe? Come on. And that's really disappointing. It seems like a sellout move, and this franchise in the comics has not had that vibe at all. So it kind of leaves a sour taste in your mouth, so to speak. Overall, it still has those big moments, those big character dialogue moments where still have arcs. 30 years old these characters are. You know what I mean? Like, we've known Megatron for 30 years, and Megatron has done what never have thought possible, which is be an Autobot. And for reasons that kind of make sense. It doesn't have to do so much with Decepticon and Autobot. It has to do with the realization that he wants to win, and he forgot what winning means. Right? Warbatron Swindle, Friday. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Till next time, take care.